Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausen Pereira. Women workforce in the country fell to 18% in 2019 from 37% in 2006. Non-government organization Azad Foundation said on the International Women's Day on Sunday. The World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report this year ranks India at 149th position out of 153 countries on economic participation and opportunity. According to the foundation, the Global Gender Gap Report estimates that raising women's participation in the labour force can increase India's GDP significantly. The declining women's labour force participation, gender pay gap, high rates of informal work with lack of social security are seen as impediments to the goal of gender equality and empowerment of women in India. Over the last few years, more women have taken up science, technology, engineering and mathematics courses and are aspiring to enter the workforce, and several steps have also been taken by the government to ensure that women are empowered across the country. However, dropout rates among women is also high, particularly around marriage, maternity and motherhood as far as employment is concerned. There are options like working from home, creches and so on, yet a lot more needs to be done. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the importance of women in the workforce. Joining me on the program today are V. Rajalakshmi, sociologist, Janki Devi Memorial College, Delhi University; Riya Mazumdar Singhal, CEO, EcoWare Solutions Private Limited; and Aditi Tandon, special correspondent of the Tribune. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Aditi, let me start the program with you. Let's first try and analyze the situation of women in the workforce. If you look at the number of women, it's 50-50. I mean, men and women, the ratio in the country is 50-50. But as far as participating in the workforce is concerned, the figures are skewed. Why is that so?
There are multiple factors for this, Frank. You know, we could, if we were about 10 years previously discussing this topic, we would perhaps attribute all the reduction in participation of women in workforce to cultural issues. But I think going forward, as the societies become modern and as more and more women take to education, one reason is that a lot of women are spending much more time in schools, in the institutions of higher education, plus at the research level. If you look at the data of the Human Resource Development Ministry, plus some data from the Department of Science, you will realize that 79% of all PhD scholars in India are actually women, which means that it's a good sign that they are spending a lot of time in education, which was not the case in the previous decades. And a lot of efforts made by successive governments on that front are paying off in the sense that women are closing the gender gap at the higher education level. For instance, if you look at the percentage of undergraduate degrees that women hold, it's about 56%. And if you see the number of PhDs that the women hold, it's around 42%. So at all levels, women are participating in education. That could be one clear factor, because you see, if you look at the labor force participation data, the latest data by the National Sample Survey also, they will tell you that the majority of reduction of women in workforce is actually accounted for by the rural women. Majority of it is on account, the pull down in India's figures is on account of rural women, and that's a clear reason. The reason in the rural sector is that the agriculture sector itself is shrinking, and the women who are getting out of agriculture do not have any job opportunities because you don't have a very robust manufacturing sector yet. We are only now starting to invest in the manufacturing and infrastructure front, which means that the jobs will take a while to come. Coming to the urban sector, where also the participation of women is not as much as it should be, my personal assessment, Frank, would be that a lot of women have issues with the way our cities are planned. For instance, if a girl is living in Gurgaon and working in Delhi, it is extremely difficult for her to manage a smooth commuting option. See, if you study global research, it will tell you that quality transportation and safety issues, plus childcare, these three facilities, if you provide to women, they are able to realize their full potential. And let us not forget that in the Indian setting, the safety in metro areas, in tier 1, tier 2 cities is a big issue, Frank. Last year, we were debating the gruesome rape of this Telangana girl. You know, she was a veterinarian at a government hospital, returning home from a day's work, and what happened to her. Earlier, if you look at the Delhi rape case, again 2012 case, The same thing, a psychotherapist, I think, or I think a physiology student. She also was returning home or enjoying her, weekly off or a Sunday. It was a Sunday. And she had this horrible accident and a horrible crime she met with on the way. So the safety issues are the primary drivers of the way women respond to working options in the urban spaces.
Right.
If we have smart cities, if we have safer commuting options, and if we have workforce and work setting plans which enable women to also raise families, you need childcare services.
Sure.
How many companies have creches? Do we have any such audit? Making laws is not enough. For instance, our government has made a lot of laws to improve women's employability. The landmark law was increasing the maternity benefit structure.
So we'll come to that in just a bit as to what steps have been taken in the recent past as far as empowering women and also ensuring that their participation in the workforce increases. But let me take another point forward with you, V. Rajalakshmi. Let's talk, of course, safety, no doubt, is one of the biggest, is very important. But let's also talk about this other issue of stereotyping women in a particular way. And also, we are a patriarchal society. So the mindset also needs to change at some level.
Absolutely, it is very essential. Now, adding to what she said, there are other factors also. Like for example, many good, like if the man is doing very well, in the sense that if, today the purchasing power or rather earning capacity is also increased. So in many urban families, when the man is able to afford to take care of the family, a lot of times women feel that it is essential for her to stay at home to give quality time to the children. Why? Mainly because youth is attracted to many things. There are a lot of crimes against young children, both inside and outside home. So the parents feel that at least one parent should be staying at home, and being a patriarchal society, usually the burden comes to the women. The other very important thing is, as you just mentioned about the maternity laws, which have been introduced, or rather the period which has been extended. Because of that, many companies do not want to give young women a job because they feel that if she's out of job for 6 to 7 months, how to compensate for that kind of a thing, because you can't employ a person and give full payment. That problem is also there. Security, of course, is very important, both in public spaces. To the very fact that we have shifted the terminology from housewife to homemaker has also created a difference within a woman to see that it is now her responsibility to take care of the household. So these are some of the reasons why we do see that women do not participate in the workforce. Of course, we have to see class-wise, and both, as she mentioned, that the differences should be seen from cities, villages to metropolitan cities all across, because we cannot have a one statement for all.
Absolutely. We can't have a one-fit-all kind of
thing,
absolutely.
Yes.
All right. So, taking the discussion forward now, Ria Singhal, as far as a woman CEO is concerned, does it become more and more difficult for a woman to climb up the ladder as well? For a same position, if there is a man and a woman who's aspiring to be at a particular position, does it become more difficult for a woman to get there? Because of the kind of society we have and because of the kind of difficulties that we have here.
So Frank, I honestly hate playing the gender card, but you're right, it does. It is very hard. I think women do have to work twice as hard. They have a lot more things to juggle, and it's not just work, even outside of work. So it just makes striving for that position, managing that position, even once you get there, a lot more challenging. Unfortunately, it is still an all-boys club out there, and women, we should encourage more women at senior leadership level, because that then helps change the culture of the company. And you see that, then you can hopefully then see more and more women come up to strides as well.
All right, taking the discussion forward now, Aditi, what measures have been taken in the recent past to try and address this particular problem, and what has the success rate been?
You see, the biggest and, in my opinion, the landmark reform that was brought into the labor sector with the Women and Child Development Ministry was the extension of the maternity benefit from 12 weeks to 26 weeks of paid maternity. Now, that was primarily conceived with the objective that Ms. Rajalakshmi was mentioning, to enable women to have families, because otherwise, you know, that whole challenge of not being able to raise a family just because you're a woman and are not able to get an enabling environment was pulling a lot of women down. So now this extended period was conceived to help women. But Frank, I have covered and reported the gender sector, and we have come across disturbing developments, disturbing evidence, which does show that a lot of companies are now preparing and deciding not to actually hire women. If that is also the truth, and the truth on the side of the women also is that there have been reports of many women actually, quickly planning families, because there's now this benefit that enables them to raise children, which means long absence from work. So it started to cut both ways. I think the maternity benefit scheme needs to be properly reviewed as to whether it's meeting the objectives, and if it is not, what are the amendments that might be required. You know, the second most important law that was mandated by the government was any organization that has more than 50 employees was supposed to have a creche, a childcare facility for women. But again, the problem with the country is that we are a very legislative heavy country, but we haven't put in too many resources to actually see whether the laws are working. Auditing of laws is something which should become an institutional practice in our country. A lot of laws have actually been taken off the statute book because they were no longer required. That process needs to be taken forward so that auditing, accounting of laws is done. The third very important advisory that was issued by the Labour Ministry to the state governments pertained to the safety of women at workplaces. The advisory was issued under the Factories Act of 1948, and the advisory clearly had said that you have to ensure safe commuting facilities for women. And after the Delhi gang rape case, you know, the J.S. Verma committee was also set up, and then the criminal law amendments happened. Even at that time, there was a huge public debate across the corporate world on how to make commuting for women safer. So to be, to be fair to the corporates and the government at the time, a lot of active effort was made, and guidelines were issued to ensure pick up and drop facilities for women working late, because the idea was to actually have a very strong infrastructure for women, which creates basically an enabling environment for them. So these are progressive steps, but you actually have to go forward and see if they are helping. If they are not helping, how can they be tweaked so that they realize their desired purpose?
Sure. All right. So, V. Rajalakshmi, is it, or rather, why is it important to have women in the workforce from a societal point of view?
See, it is very important. I would first say for the company, then come to the family and the society at large. For a company, of course, it is very essential, mainly because women have a different ways of looking at things. There could be a complete and opposite viewpoint, because men think differently, women think differently. So that kind of an contrast should be there. Two, it is also very important, because see, what happens is men tend to realize the way the problems of the working women, so that once they go back, they can understand their wife's problems in case she's working somewhere else. Same thing holds for the women. She also understands the work pressure and the work burden of the husband. So that kind of a mutual understanding becomes very, very important, and that you can only learn when you are at a workplace. Now, coming to the family. Now, in the family, of course, it's very important, because most the qualities like independence, interdependency, tolerance, discipline, time management, trying to work different things at different times, that is multitasking, all these qualities you can learn and teach to your family members better in case you go out to work. So this is very important. Two, of course, when you go out to work, you further employ the other people, so money gets circulated. That is, like cooking, cleaning, you do have people coming over to do that work for you. So that way also the family, improves. Two, of course, the financial independence for you, and raising the standard of living for the family as a whole. So that becomes very important. Why? Mainly because these days with the death rate control, or you can say with the medical facilities, the lifespan of the elders is quite a bit, and your lifespan also, you can say, would definitely increase. So because of that, you need to plan your future for that single earning member is not enough. So therefore, that is also very important. For that also, it's very important that you should work. And so that could be one. Now, of course, 50% of the population for any society not working, not good. So it is very essential for the society as a whole that women should participate and work.
Okay, so taking that particular aspect forward, Ria Singhal, as far as the economy is concerned, there are several concerns about the economy in India and how it is in a spot of bother. But, there are several studies that have shown that if the women actively partake in the workforce, it can have a great impact on the economy as well. And even in India, people suggest that they could contribute significantly to the GDP.
I agree, Frank. I think that for any sort of campaign or anything to be a success in our country, from Make in India to achieving this $5 trillion economy, we need to have women as part of the workforce. I do a lot of work with CII on personally how to get more women into manufacturing, because that's something I'm really passionate about. We've often found that all our board toppers are girls. We have no idea what we're losing them to. So we're really working actively to see how to get more girls into manufacturing, to upskill them and to retain them all as well. So I know we've touched upon certain aspects of safety in maternity leave or even flexi working hours. And again, I do a lot of work with the National Commission of Women as well, and we do a lot of workshops on how to empower women through entrepreneurship. So we really want to get our women out there, engaged in the workforce, engaged in the community, because it has obviously this positive impact on economic, social, and personally for them as well.
Right, since we are here, Ria, let me take a couple of aspects forward with you. Since you work so closely with these women, so what are some of their apprehensions really as far as joining the workforce is concerned? What keeps them away from working, or rather this kind of formal work?
So I think specifically in the manufacturing sector, we found that a lot of girls weren't aware of roles that they could possibly, the sort of the job descriptions or what it is that they could be doing in a manufacturing sector, because they, I think, typically feel that these are more male-dominated roles. So we've worked on active recruiting at campuses to say, these are the kind of things that we do. This is what the company is about. Would you like to come and join us? As well as speak to their families, because again, there's this misconception of this is more of a male-dominated sector. Is it safe for my girls to be working on a factory floor? What is it that you're doing as an employer to keep them safe? So that element of reassurance, that element of education in terms of what role exists, and then again to upskill. So sorry, just before I come to upskilling, safety is a paramount factor, because for instance, my factory is out in Greater Noida, and when I started 5 years ago, I didn't have a single woman, as much as I'd wanted, to be able to come and, she didn't feel safe to come to this factory out in Greater Noida. So when we started, 100% of our workforce was men, and then we slowly kind of, built an element of trust, and we kind of, again, from a transportation point of view, from a flexi hour point of view, we said if we hire girls that they would only work the day shift. We would not hire them in the night. And so I think, we kind of got this element of credibility, and then slowly people started bringing their wives on board or their sisters, and now we've got about 40% of our workforce that's women. So I think safety plays a huge part as well. And then, again, it's about promoting these women and empowering them when they're working for you, upskilling them. You started in one role, great, okay, there are like 10 other things that you could do on this manufacturing unit. What do you want to do? We build those personal development plans and help them through their success stories. And then I think, to come to the next part, which is retaining them, we've touched upon the maternity aspect, is, how flexible are you? Do you have a creche? We've had, when I used to work in the UK for Pfizer, we had a great contract for mothers, and that was called, the part-time, term-time contract. So it was basically went in parallel to the school hours as well as the school holidays, and that's something that we're looking to implement as well. So yeah, and I think equal pay is an important one. You know, are you paying your women the same amount? Are you paying as you paying a man to do the same job?
Right. Yeah, I think these are all very, very good aspects. Yeah, please do.
Sorry. Actually, you know what, about the patriarchal notion and the way in which there is gender stereotyping. Yes, there is, because, you know, a lot of jobs are, you know, divided as men's job or women's job. There is a division like that. And suppose in case women take up jobs which are actually so-called males' job, like manufacturing or technicians and all, they, you know, in the marriage or family fields gets very scared that the girl might not be able to get married. You know, the family gets scared, and then even if they take up the job, they want her to, you know, temporarily be out of the job just before a marriage. Why? Mainly because they feel that these kind of jobs maybe probably she'll not be able to get a good husband. So that kind of notion, and of course the sexual harassment which a lot of people feel and that complain about it, that is also a problem. Now, in those kind of jobs where the promotions and the job is not well defined, in the sense the you know, the nature of the job is not well defined, there are more problems which women face.
Right.
So that's also
sure.
an issue.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. These are some things that we need to address. So time now to get closing comments from all my guests. The best way forward, starting first with you, Aditi.
See, as far as I'm concerned, I think hiring women or increasing their participation in workforce alone is not enough. Of course, it's very important considering 234 million people will join the Indian workforce by 2025. So gender parity in Indian context is more important than in context of any other country in the world, because we have a demographic dividend. Increasing 10 percentage points of participation of women in the workforce will boost our GDP by about US $777 billion by 2025, and that will aid our economy to become a 5 trillion economy. So that's one part of the story. But what I was saying is, getting them into workforce is not the only goal that we should be looking at. Are women presently in leadership roles or not? That is equally important. The lady entrepreneur was mentioning equal parity, equal pay parity. Well, in India, there are researches which tell us that for the same job, a man gets 100 rupees and the woman gets 65 rupees. So that's the kind of pay gap that we are talking about. That's one. And you have to ensure women in leadership roles, because once women are in leadership roles, women-centric and enabling environments will automatically flow. But the sad truth today is, Frank, that recent research by market researchers has shown that about, if you take 160 top or the largest companies in India, only 6% of these companies, I mean, board chairs are only 6%
Absolutely.
women.
Yeah,
so which is a very sad fact.
It's very sad and very skewed as well,
Yeah.
and that's something that we need to correct
So
going
leadership
forward. Yeah.
roles for women.
Absolutely. Viraj Lakshmi.
I feel that whenever the government, the state or anybody makes any kind of a program, policies or comes up with a new law or amendments in laws, it's very essential that there should be a proper research behind it. Because normally what happens is one announces something and then the repercussions are sometimes negative than the positive. So these
Right.
kind of things can be avoided. Two, of course, it's very, very essential for both the family and the individual to be working, because that gives a, you know, interaction. Of course, there's no better learning than interacting. So the more you interact with the outside world, the better person you become. And even at the workplace, it's very important that there should be equal number of men and women, because the sensitivity can be more there. So I would say that it's very essential for women to come out and work. And the state should, of course, play a very, very important role in providing a proper, safe environment.
Absolutely. And Riya, please close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
So, Frank, I think, you know, we all agree that there are a large pool of talented, educated women in our country. We need to engage them. We need to get them in. We need to not just see them in, we need to see them in every level of the company, basically from senior positions downwards. And we need the culture to change, right? So I would just say that what's important to me is that we need to be more consistent with this. What we see is that around March 8th, International Women's Day, suddenly this becomes a hot topic and everyone is talking about this. But I wish for us to talk about this all year round, because only then do I feel is something going to change and something going to happen.
Absolutely. I think with that spirit, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you, ladies, for joining me on the program and sharing your views and putting things into perspective. For us, that's it from me. As I leave, I'd like to wish you all a very happy Holi. See you again next time.